the In Conversation podcast series with author Nigel Beckles.
Welcome to the podcast.
Get ready for takeoff.
Welcome to another episode of my In Conversation podcast series. My guest for this episode is TheL.E.A.N MindBody Coach, holder of a cognitive therapy behavior diploma, trainer and author, Ken Barnes. Hi Ken, welcome to my podcast series.
Hi Nigel, really great to be a guest on your show and looking forward to speaking with you.
So how have you been?
Excellent. I mean, we're in troubling times. It is really a troubling times, and the lockdown has obviously restricted us in many ways, but I've actually used this time in quite a productive way to develop and learn and develop my business. I've done at least 3 courses during the time and spent a good amount of time on my project. So the time has been very well spent for me.
Okay, well let's go back in time a little bit. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Hackney. I was born in Hackney Hospital. Well, it was Comerton Hospital back then, but yeah, I was born in the sunny town, if you want to call it sunny town of Hackney, where it's sunny now. You can't really afford to live there. The prices have gone up so much there.
Okay, and what were your favourite subjects at school? Did you have any particular favourite subjects at school?
The funny thing is, my favourite subject at school was science. And the reason for that is I used to get to the lesson early, and myself and the teacher used to do a crossword puzzle together. So that became one of my favourite subjects in school, science. And also I really, really enjoyed English as well.
So during your life journey, was there a particular life experience that you believe changed you as a person?
Yeah, there absolutely was. I think the first one that stands out is the birth of my first daughter. That was an incredible experience for me. It was a life-changing experience. I mean, I think childbirth is a miracle. So the other life-changing experience for me was when my car got stolen. I was about 30 years old, and some individuals came into my office and they put a gun to my head. It sounds really scary. In fact, it was really, really scary at that point. And they stole my car, and the whole incident happened. It was just a year after my daughter was born. And it really made me reflect on my life, the people I had around me, where I went, and how I conducted myself. They also taught me that circumstances around you are dictated by how you respond to them. And I decided not to let that victimization, not to let those individuals who have come and stolen my car and however they wanted to make me feel, I refused to allow them to do that. And it was one of the first moments where something really traumatic had happened to me. And in a very short time, I was able to take control of my life, take control of my emotions and my feelings, and carry on. And it was a big lesson, because life throws things at us at times unexpectedly. But the thing we have control of is how we respond to them. And that lesson really brought that home to me. And it's something that I've used throughout my life, and I've shared it in my trainings, and I've passed that experience and that knowledge onto my children, that, you know, life will throw things at you. You may not always have the control of what happens to you in your life, but you always have the control of how you respond to it.
So what was the outcome of that incident? Were they ever caught? Were they ever charged?
No, they were never caught. I mean, invariably, you know, it's a car theft. It's not very high on the police scale, so they were never caught. For me, that was never the point. For me, it was the lesson that gave me. And, you know, I read a book when I was younger. About 21, I read a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And one of the statements that really rang true to me was, in every adversity, there's a seed of equivalent benefit. So in every negative, in every disaster, in every bad thing that happens to us, if we look at it in a certain way, we can find the lesson. And that's exactly what I did. And that lesson really helped put me on a trajectory to where I am now.
So So what made you decide to become a life coach?
I was started my journey really working with young people in schools. And I found great satisfaction in seeing how they were growing and learning and developing. And I found I had a passion for it, and I found I had a skill set for it. And, I began to ask myself questions. What's my purpose in life? What's the meaning of my life? And what do I want my legacy to be? And as I began to reflect on that, it became clear to me my legacy was about impacting people's lives in a positive way. And I moved on from working with young people to working with adults in the corporate world and delivering my own seminars. So in the beginning, I wasn't so much of a life coach. I was more of a trainer because I did a lot of group training and a lot of corporate training. I used to go into organizations and do soft skill training. And I've always felt very passionate about that because whenever I'm working with individuals or groups and I see that they are not only grasping the information but implementing it in their life, and then I get the feedback of how they've got positive change, it's a real gratifying experience for me, and I can't think of any better way for me to be able to earn a living than to do that.
So when you were teaching children, in what capacity were you doing that? Were you a teacher?
Well, it was more than life skills. I was delivering life skills. I was going into schools and just, again, teaching young people about behavior, about emotional control, teaching them that they could really take control of their own emotions and that, the short time they had in school, that they should make use of it because it was creating a foundation that they could build on for the rest of their lives. So in essence, it was life skill training, and it was at a time when it wasn't very fashionable, but it was very productive and very useful.
So how did you make the transition then from children to teaching adults?
I made the transition. I wrote a book called Respectisms, the 7 Principles of Respectisms, which I then delivered into schools, and I turned that book into an accredited level 2 program, which was quite successful. We delivered in a number of schools, even some schools in Europe. But it then came to a point where there suddenly began to become an influx of individuals working in schools. And I then got to the point where I felt the schools were not valuing me in the way they should do. And that became very frustrating because I felt I couldn't impact the young people in the way I wanted to. And I felt like I was just ticking a box. So I began to slowly get a little bit frustrated, a little bit disenfranchised. I came up with a concept called an inspirational youth luncheon, and that's where I would invite young people to a 5-star hotel, sit around the table with some successful role models. That program happened outside of school. I had complete control of it, and I was still able to impact the young people in the way that I wanted to, and it went extremely, extremely well. That led on to a few other activities, but then I wrote a second book called The I Factor, and it was a series of 52 inspirational short passages used in my methodology, which I created, called Transition Through Introspection. And that simply means change through looking within, not looking at anybody else, but looking within. And it all started with an I. And that book went down incredibly well. And then I turned that book into a coaching program. And it was from there that I then started to work with adults. And in the corporate world, I held some seminars called AIM seminars, called Aspirational, Inspirational, and Motivational Seminars. They went incredibly well. I held some I Factor dinners where I brought people along and look at the passages, because I created a set of cards that helped to, bring out the messages in the book. So that went really well. And, I really gained a lot of benefit from work with adults. And again, it was in my control. I was outside of the school system, and this was outside of inside of my control, the way I could work with these adults. So that's what really started my first journey with working with adults. Even I was doing it intermittently, but that's when I really got very, very serious about it.
Well, there are a lot of life coaches around. I see life coaches advertising online and everywhere else. So are there qualifications required to become a life coach?
Let me just repeat. A life coach was not a title I ever gave myself. It was a trainer. But yeah, there are definitely qualifications that people can take to become a life coach. For me, there became an era when there was a plethora of marketing activities for people to become a life coach. And I think people went through they got the so-called qualifications, but I don't believe they had the quote-unquote confidence to be able to deliver on a life coaching career, because really many people went through those life coaching academies to help themselves. So, I really think that people really need some grounded experience. For me, I would see myself as a group trainer back then rather than a life coach, even though I am a coach now.
So do you have one-to-one clients at the moment?
Well, so let me just give you a little bit more background. So I then moved from the young people to working with adults. And then I moved from the adults. Well, in fact, I expanded my range of adult working into some Christian inspirational products called the Christian Power Book. And I created a series of Christian inspirational products which sold incredibly well into many churches. And that was for a few years and impacted a number of lives. And then I got a call one day from someone who I had been working with, who was incredibly thankful for the work I'd done with him, but he was sick. And he said, Ken, I just feel so unwell, and, I really want to do so much in my life, but I just don't have the health and even the mental capacity at the moment. And when he put the phone down, I kind of sat and I thought, wow, this man had been impacted in such a way that he was inspired, he was ready to take action, but his health didn't allow him to do it. And I just had an epiphany moment where I feel that my focus needs to I felt my focus needs to have a real foundation on health. So I then went on another journey to study health as much as I could, and I qualified as a health coach to complement all the other things I was doing. So as well as I was doing the health coaching, I always included mindset and psychology and thinking in it. And then I also qualified in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because I wanted to understand how the mind works, why we do things and why we stop things. So I then had a health coaching practice, which was focusing on improving people's health and working with their mindset so they could develop habits.
How do you measure success with your clients or your groups?
At the moment, the transition I made into, again, let me just go back very, very slightly so you understand where I'm at now. I was about to launch my practice as a health coach, and the most devastating thing happened to me was the passing of my mother, which was about 3 years ago, and it kind of sent me on a downward spiral whereby I kind of lost it, to be honest with you. I was really close to my mum, and I really lost it, put an incredible amount of weight, and I stopped really caring and looking after myself. I got to the point where I looked in the mirror and I said, my mum wouldn't want me to be this way, and I need to make some changes in my life. And that's when I started on the path which I'm on now, because at over 50 years old, I was finding it incredibly difficult to lose weight, even though I was a qualified health coach. I'd learned about calorie restriction and portion sizes. It just wasn't working, and it just wasn't fun for me. It just wasn't working for me to be able to lose weight. And I remembered one day that someone had spoke about eating a low-carb diet, and I took some time and done some research, and I thought this sounds interesting. I then started on this low-carb diet, and my weight improved dramatically. In fact, over the course of about 6-9 months, I lost over nearly 50 pounds. Sleep apnea, and it was phenomenal what happened. It was just unbelievable that I was eating foods that I grew up being told not to eat, but they were impacting my life in such a positive way. So I decided to change my whole health coaching practice to becoming a health coach that practices low-carb nutrition and mindset. And that brings me to where I am now. So my focus is about helping people to be able to lose weight and also manage their blood sugar, reverse pre-diabetes and also reverse diabetes. So you'll ask me, how do I measure my success? I measure my success when people are on my program or I'm coached and they lose weight. I had a program in November. One woman in 30 days, she lost over 21 pounds. Wow. The average weight was about 7 to 8 pounds. Some people lost 10, but she lost 21 pounds in a very short period of time. I've worked with people who have reversed their pre-diabetes. I've even worked with people who have actually reversed diabetes, even though that takes a lot more attention. I really focus on people who haven't reached that diabetic state. So that's how I measure my success, when people lose weight and then also when their blood sugar comes down to a normal level. But I am now moving on to the next level with that, because, Nigel, the unfortunate thing about change is that change has to be sustained. And it's no good making a change and then going back to our old behaviors, because our old behaviors will then bring out the old manifestation of those habits. And unfortunately, when it comes to diet and lifestyle changes, people find it incredibly difficult to sustain. So now I'm moving on to the next chapter of what I'm doing by creating an ongoing community which people can join over the next weeks, months and years, where I will help them to not only change their habits and lose weight and manage their blood sugar, but to sustain that over the next coming weeks, months and years.
So besides creating a community, have you got any other plans for the future?
Well, I think that is a huge project of mine. I wrote a book. I did write another book. Well, I've written a few other books before that, but just pertinent to this health coaching, I wrote a book called Lean Keto. With Lean Keto, which I'm now rebranding to be called TheL.E.A.N MindBodyMethod. So that has gone extremely well and been really well received. There's possibly another book that I intend to write. But Nigel, this project that I'm working on now called the Lean Lifestyle Tribe is one I believe is going to not just help people lose weight and manage their blood sugar, but it's going to save lives. So for me, at the age where I'm at now, I think this is my final chapter. So I'm investing all my time, all my energy, all my study into making sure I can effectively serve the people that join this community that I'm starting.
Your activities sound very admirable, I have to say. So, Ken Barnes, thank you very much for your time.
Well, Nigel, a real pleasure speaking with you, and, I hope that some of your listeners have gained some insight, not just into what I do, but insight into the fact that, no matter what life throws at them, it's how they respond to it that counts. And as they say, we can make lemonade out of lemons if we have the right mindset.
Very, very true indeed, and that's great advice. Take care now. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Nigel.
Thank you for listening. Please join me for another In Conversations podcast very soon for more interesting and entertaining discussions. Stay safe.